Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Richard Skipper, entertainer, host, producer, and interviewer. Please enjoy Richard Skipper. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Richard Skipper, entertainer, host, producer, interviewer, and so much more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you do, first of all. Because the creative process, it's funny. The other day I was watching songwriter, and I can't think of her name right now, and it's going to pop into my head any moment. But she's written songs for everybody. And she said the one question that she hates to be asked the most is, what is your creative process?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm the complete opposite of that. Because not only do I love talking about my own process, but I love hearing about the process of other people and how they go about creating whatever creativity they're putting out into the world.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you first for joining me today. And I
Thank
am
you.
super excited to get to ask you all of the questions about your creative process and what it means to you. But first, let's learn a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
How much time do you have? No, I grew up on a farm in South Carolina. True story. I came to New York in 1979, long
Okay.
before you were born. Uh, I came to New York in 1979 at the age of 18 with $500 in my pocket and
Oh,
big
wow.
dreams.
Yeah.
I was a product of 1960s and 70s television.
Mm.
There were three networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS. And
Hmm.
those three networks, think about this for a moment. They only went from early morning until they would sign off the air at 1 o'clock in the morning. Have you ever heard about any of this?
Oh, yes.
And then the national anthem will be played, and then there would be a test pattern. And
Yeah.
so all these three networks, obviously for the time allotted them,
Hmm.
they wanted to get the biggest demographic that they could possibly get.
Hmm.
So I grew up watching the artists of my generation, my parents' generation, and my grandparents' generation all together. Because as a
Mm-hmm.
family unit, we used to sit down and watch television together.
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, variety shows
Mm.
were the norm. Not only the variety shows that were on week after week, like the Cal
Mhm.
Burnett Show and Sonny and Cher, and then the Cher Show and Donnie and Marie and the Flip Wilson Show and all of those. And then there were the specials that came
Yeah.
on once a year where you would see Mitzi Gaynor and Anne
Hmm.
Margaret and all of these artists. That was the show business that I wanted to be a part of.
Mm.
And so it was like I had to be a part of that show business, no matter what it took to get there,
Hmm.
and any of this. And so when I arrived in New York on August 5th, 1979, I imagined that New York being what I was coming to. And
Oh.
really what I was coming to was the New York of Taxi Driver and Midnight Cowboy. It
Hmm.
was sleazy, it was dirty, it was uh, to be an 18-year-old on my own at that point in life, having never gone anywhere in my life, had
Yeah.
never moved beyond the parameters of where I grew up. I mean, it was pretty eye-opening.
I
And
bet.
yet it was exciting.
Yeah.
It was incredibly exciting.
Oh my goodness. And so you've been an entertainer since then.
I've been an entertainer. Uh, in school when I was a kid, anytime that I could find my way on stage, I was there.
Yeah.
And then my local theater company in my hometown,
Hmm.
the Theater of the Republic, and I say this to everyone who's watching out there: do not negate community theater, because the
Absolutely.
stars of tomorrow are coming out of there.
Yeah.
So I was a part of that world. And then
Mm-hmm.
my last year in South Carolina, I ended up doing work with the University of South Carolina in their theater department.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I arrived in New York, I felt like I had a body, I call it a body of worth
Mm-hmm.
instead of a body of work. I
Yeah.
felt like I had a body of worth underneath me. And
Yeah.
so I've been my entire life, this has been a part of my DNA. This is who I am. This is what I'm a part of, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very much a part of me.
I love it. And you call yourself an entertainer and not a performer. And
That's
I'm
right.
really curious what that distinction is and why you do that.
Well, I was very, very fortunate. I'm going to drop a name here, but I was very, very fortunate. And you can see, are we going to be on camera or is it
It's
just the
just
audio?
audio.
It's just the audio. So you'll have to take my word for it. I'm surrounded by images of Carol Channing.
Ah,
She was truly one of my very best friends.
oh,
And
I love
Carol
her.
Channing said, there are entertainers and
Mm-hmm.
there are performers.
Yeah.
A seal is a performer. A seal is
Mm.
only interested in one thing, getting a fish.
Mm-hmm.
So it will balance the ball on its nose, it will flap its wings, it will stand on its fins, it will do whatever it has to do to get that fish. It's not
Mm.
interested in the audience. It's
Mm-hmm.
not interested in any other aspect of why it's there except to get that fish. On the other hand, an entertainer is solely focused on the audience. It's not about
Oh.
me getting up on stage and doing what
Mm-hmm.
I do. It's about those people out there. And I have a meditation that I
Mm-hmm.
do before I go on with every show. And
Mm-hmm.
that meditation that I do is I try to imagine the road and the route that it took for my audience to get to see me tonight.
Mm.
So, what was their day like? Did they
Yeah.
deal with traffic? I live in New York, so these are the issues that people are dealing with all the time: traffic, gas, tolls, parking. We have
Yeah.
this new thing called congestion pricing. We have all of these things that people are going through. So,
Mm-hmm.
from the moment that that announcer makes the announcement that I'm about to hit the stage,
Mm-hmm.
my audience deserves and they require it to
Yeah.
put all of that that's going on before I walk out on that stage
Mm-hmm.
outside and just to focus on this moment, like you and
Mm-hmm.
I together with what
Yeah.
we're doing right now.
I love that. I love the distinction and I love the seal piece
Yes.
because that helps me just make that distinction. Absolutely. Well, when you think of creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
Well, I think that everybody is creative.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who go, "Well, I can't draw as well as that person," or "I
Yeah.
can't paint as that well as that person," or there are many, many, many things in this business that
Mm-hmm.
I know I cannot do. I heard
Sure.
someone talking the other day, and he was talking about all the shows that he did, and he said he was a Tony Award winning Broadway entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I want to apologize for all the choreographers that I made cry over the years because he said, I'm not a dancer. I was born with two left feet, and I'm the first to admit it. I can
Yeah.
sing, I can act, create something for me, I can do it. But
Yeah.
I am I can probably pick up a step or two, and I do
Oh.
mean probably in a step or two. But nothing beyond that. But I believe that everybody, in answer to your question, is creative.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that unfortunately we live in a world
Yeah.
where creativity is squashed. It's somehow
Mm.
looked down upon. When
Mm-hmm.
you think about schools, and I've mentored in schools,
Yeah.
that when the kids want to get new seats for the auditorium,
Mm-hmm.
they do cake sales and they do bake sales and they do magazine sales and they do whatever they can to
Yeah.
raise the money. And if they say we want new stadium seating, for the football stadium,
Mm-hmm.
people are throwing money at them.
Right.
And I don't understand why we don't put our creativity on a
Mm.
higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone out there who's going, well, I don't have talent, I don't have this. Um, people say to me, well, I can't sing. And I go, well, that doesn't stop a lot of people.
This is so true.
It's true. It's true.
Absolutely. Yeah, the saying, if you can talk, you can sing. If you walk, you can dance in
Yes,
some version
in
of it.
some version. I'll
Yeah.
tell you a very interesting story. Those who know me um,
Hmm.
know that I have a show celebrating the history of Hello Dolly,
Yeah.
and I have been chronicling the history of Hello Dolly
Mm.
for 25 years at least.
Oh, wow.
And I got the opportunity to interview Marion McAndrews, who
Hmm.
played Irene Malloy in the movie version of Hello Dolly.
Hmm.
She was doing a show called How Now Dow Jones on Broadway, and Gene Kelly came to see her. And I'm going to throw a name that you may not know, but look it up, Kay Kendall. And
Hmm.
Kay Kendall was a very well-known, beautiful actress. And when Gene Kelly saw Mary McAndrews, she reminded him of a very young Kay Kendall, and
Mm.
he wanted her in the movie. And she went in to meet with him, and she said, Mr. Kelly, I can't act, I can't sing, I can't dance. He said, this is Hollywood, we can fix that. So she is dubbed in this movie
My
by
goodness.
three different actresses,
I
three
never knew
different
that.
singers. Yes.
Wow.
In each of her songs in the movie, she is
Hmm.
dubbed by a different singer to get the feel for what they wanted to evoke in that moment.
Oh,
And
wow.
in her dancing, and it looks like she's dancing, but all of the dancing is going on around her. Michael
Mm-hmm.
Kidd, who was the choreographer for the film,
Yeah.
made it all happen around her. So when people think of the film, they don't think, well, she can't act, she can't sing, she can't dance. I think she's brilliant in the film. So,
Yeah.
you work around it.
I love that. I love the magic of the movies for sure. And now I know a lot of times people will throw out this idea or term, the creative process.
Mhm.
And I think for many people, they assume the creative process is a prescription that people follow and you go through these stages and these steps. I believe we all have our own creative process and what that
Absolutely.
looks like. So I'm so curious for you when you're preparing for something or when you're researching something, like what is your creative process?
I'm open to everything. And
Mm.
I'm looking for things in every nook and cranny.
Hmm.
Um, when I was a kid, I had a great mentor, and she had this playhouse in her backyard, and I used to go and I would work with her every Wednesday and Thursday afternoon. And again, we're talking the 70s
Hmm.
here. And I would go to her house, and she would throw out a name. Like, just throw out any famous name right now, and I'll give you an example.
Fred Astaire.
Fred Astaire. She would say, "Okay, Ricky," as I was called then. She said, "Ricky, tell me what Fred Astaire is known for.
Mm.
What distinguishes Fred Astaire from other people?" And if I didn't know who Fred Astaire was, she would close the book and she would say, "I will see you next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Know who Fred Astaire is." So what
Mm.
I would do, and this was in the days before Google, I
Yep.
would run to our local library, and
Yeah.
I would go. We had a very small movie and theater art
Hmm.
section, I guess you would call it, and I would go and I would go on the bookshelf, and every book that
Mm.
had Fred Astaire's name in the index,
Hmm.
I would check out. My dad came to pick me up one Saturday afternoon, and I had 36 books to check out of the library. And I'm not exaggerating. And my father, he said, "Are you crazy?" But the librarian said, he's like a sponge. He wants to know all of this. Let him, let him.
Mm.
And so I took these books out of the library
Hmm.
in laundry baskets. And I would just go home and I would read about Fred Astaire. And I knew
Yeah.
who, and that has never left me. She
Mm.
said,
Hmm.
every time you step on stage, you're carrying with you the mantle of every artist that came before you.
Hmm.
So even singing a song in a show,
Yeah.
I want to know, what was the process behind that song? What
Oh.
was it that triggered the songwriter to
Hmm.
write that song? It's not just about me getting up and learning the notes,
Hmm.
learning the lyrics.
Yeah.
Uh, it's about everything that brought me to that point. And
Mm.
that passion
Yeah.
for all of that is still very much a part of who I am.
I love that. And you're like a detective in that experience also of learn the knowledge and the amount of information that you're gathering about, like you said, what made the composer write that music or the lyricist write those words for this song that is in this show or is
And
being shared.
I read a lot.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm,
I'm reading a book now called And Then We Rise by, believe
mm,
it or not, Common.
mm-hmm.
And Common says in this book, he's talking about the process of eating a great meal.
Oh yeah.
When sitting down and having a great meal,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many factors that go into that great meal.
Mm-hmm.
There's the atmosphere. There are
Yeah.
the people that you're sharing the meal with.
Mm-hmm.
But often, when you sit down to eat a great meal, that you think about what got that meal to your table.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
as I was reading this, I'm going, thinking about my process and how I go about looking at things.
Yeah.
All of the elements that brought you to this table. If to this day, if I see a name pop up and I don't know who that person is, I
Mm-hmm.
Google them. There's no excuse anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to do so. But I
Yeah.
really want to know everything that brought that to this moment.
Yeah.
And there are performers that go on stage, performers that go on stage who go through the rote of a
Yeah.
performance. And
Mm-hmm.
you may be thinking, and you may be
Mm,
experiencing the greatest performance of all time.
mm,
But do
mm-hmm.
they really know what's all behind what they're singing and dancing? And
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that most don't.
You're probably correct. Yeah, the difference of knowing something and embodying something is kind of the distinction that I'm hearing you say.
But once you start to do that, it changes the entire way that you experience not only your own art, but
Yeah.
every aspect of your life. When you sit here and you're sitting in your office
Mm-hmm.
and you're surrounded by plants and
Mm-hmm.
your lamp and all of these things, what brought these things to you? How
Yeah.
are they in your possession? And not to get morbid, but this horrible thing that's happening in California right now
Yeah.
with people losing so much that they've lived
Mm-hmm.
their entire lifetimes building.
Right.
And, and I heard someone say the other day that on one hand, you go, they're just things, but they're not just things.
Yeah.
There are memories attached to those.
Absolutely.
I sit in my living room and I've had friends who have lost a lot in the last week.
Mm-hmm.
And it just rips my heart out
Yeah.
uh, because these things that I'm surrounded by, photographs and mementos of my career, my
Mm-hmm.
life, all of those are encapsulated in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there, I mean, there's an attachment to everything
Of
when you take the
course.
time to think about those attachments.
Yeah. Yeah. And do that kind of personal research for yourself of why you are attached to these aspects or objects or pieces in your own life. It's like a study of who you are in
Yes,
your own
absolutely.
process. Yeah. I mean, you strike me as someone who is has a lot of things that inspire them, but in your life today, who or what inspires you?
You inspire me.
Oh,
No, seriously. I mean, the fact that you are interested enough to talk to other artists
mhm.
about creativity, that
Yeah.
inspires me.
Mm.
Um, we live in a celebrity-driven culture
Yes.
where people are obsessed with the celebrity.
Hmm.
Uh, but again, I've had the good fortune of interviewing so many people myself
Yeah.
that I want to know what was that moment. One of the things that I do when
Hmm.
I'm interviewing someone is I ask them to bring a 5-year-old picture of themselves
Mm.
because to me, the 5-year-old self is the purest self. It's
Yeah.
before life begins to tell you who you are,
Hmm.
what you should be, what you should not be. And we
Right.
live in a culture, if you're paying attention,
Yeah.
where too many people are so involved in the personal lives of people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when my husband and I got married,
Mm-hmm.
we were like one of the first same-sex couples in my county to get married.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we were interviewed by everybody. And I
Sure.
said, I have to be honest with you. I said, a typical night for us, unless I'm doing a show somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we sit down and we have dinner together watching Jeopardy to make sure that our brains are still operating.
Yeah.
And then we watch a movie.
Yeah.
And that's a typical night in our home.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, the way that people, there's something about us, our psyche, that want us to look through the keyhole of what other people are doing in their lives.
Yeah.
And and I wish that more time was spent on uh, the uh, uh, the creative process.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Fred Astaire earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What made Fred Astaire so unique? Um, and of course, he was a product of his time.
Sure.
Uh, those kind of movies
Mm-hmm.
that exemplified what he did on screen.
Yeah.
Um, he was at the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many people at this very moment who are standing in line to audition for a show, who are anxious, about where their next acting job or singing job
Yeah.
or everything is coming from. And you can have the greatest recording of any song in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I interviewed Carol Lawrence, and
Mm-hmm.
Carol Lawrence said to me, being in this business is the greatest elixir in the world. The
Mm.
more we get, the more we want. But the
Yeah.
real test is whether or not the public wants it.
Oh, that is.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it has nothing to do with my abilities or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do, and we talked about this before we went live. Um, I believe that life begins when we say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
mean, say more about that. Say more
well, do you know
about.
anything? I mean, do you know anything about improvisation?
Yes.
Well, in improvisation, what is the kiss of death?
No.
No, no, you got the prize. That's the kiss of death.
Yeah.
Say no, everything stops.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say yes, let me try that, or yes to whatever the question is, or
Yeah.
whatever the situation is, it opens so many possibilities and so many
Right.
doors.
Yeah.
Now, you and I both know if you and I go through life saying yes to every single thing that comes along, um, either we're going to overexert ourselves or we're
Absolutely.
going to get nowhere.
Yeah.
But so you have to be discerning in
Mm.
terms of what those yeses are.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I've learned in all of my work
Mm-hmm.
is the one thing that every artist, every human being has in common
Mm.
is we want to be heard.
Mm. Absolutely.
And if people are not listening, there's
Mm-hmm.
a cutoff there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm curious, being in the entertainment world and field,
Mhm.
you don't always hear a yes
No,
for what
no.
you have to share and show up with. So how do you personally navigate those no's and still keep your own creativity alive?
Well, first of all, one of my favorite books is The Four Agreements. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you know it, but
I
one of the
do,
four
yes.
agreements is it's not about you.
Yeah. Yes.
And so when someone's casting something,
Mm-hmm.
uh, a show, there are so many variables involved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can understand if producers are putting an exorbitant amount of money because it costs millions now to get a show on its feet,
Yeah.
um, that they want to go with a name
Mm-hmm.
rather than going with an unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Once in a blue moon, it happens
Mm-hmm.
where that person who is not as well known, excuse me, is given a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that that may be a variable that has
Mm-hmm.
to do with this. I may remind them of somebody that they don't like,
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is I begin each day by thinking of like today, I want 9 yeses.
Hmm.
Today, I want 9 yeses that are going to propel me. 9 people that will say, yes, I will come see your next show.
Hmm.
Yes, I will book you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I will do this. That doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the process of
Mm.
going after those yeses
Mm-hmm.
is what keeps me going.
Mm.
So I don't have time to think when this person says no to me
Yeah.
that I don't want to get there. And I'll tell you something very interesting. Linda Lavin, who just passed away,
Yeah.
I was watching an interview with her, and during COVID, they did a celebration of Stephen Sondheim. And she uh, had heard about this. And she introduced a song called The Girl From, which is a spoof of The Boy from Ipanema.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote, and she says, how would you like to have Linda Lavin come on your show and sing this song? Signed, Linda Lavin. And of course, they got back to her and they said, yes. We think a lot of times, because this little devil that sits on our shoulders
Mm.
constantly with the pitchfork poking at our brain and saying, you're not good enough, they're not interested. Um, and it could be a lot of things that have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And so I've reached out a point for me, everyone watching, say yes. If I see that a show is going up, or I will write to the people
Mm.
in charge saying, um, if you're not already cast, I'd like to have a chance to come in and read for you.
Mm.
Or and to me, it's not about necessarily getting the job.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting seen.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yes, if they at least see me,
Mm-hmm.
I am, a name on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
They may think of me a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now. Who
Uh-huh.
knows? But you constantly, I mean, it's a wrap. We are all on a treadmill,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in today's world.
Mm.
And the other, I always say to all of my friends, stay in your lane and keep your blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you unique
Mm-hmm.
with what you do? What makes this podcast different
Yeah.
from every other podcast that's out there? Because at this moment, I know that in the case with you and me,
Mm-hmm.
this is being pre-recorded. It
Mm-hmm.
will air at another time.
Yeah.
At this very moment, you know that there are at least 100 podcasts happening at this very moment.
More.
And
Yes.
then when you drop this, um, at the very moment that this gets dropped, um,
Mm-hmm.
there could be, God forbid, some strange thing happening in the world,
Yeah.
or all of these things that take away from this.
Mm-hmm.
This, I was reading the other night, I was watching a YouTube video last night about 1984, the Tony Awards.
Mm-hmm.
And that year, that was The Rink, Sunday in the Park with George, Baby, uh,
Uh-huh.
and uh, Le Cage aux Folles.
Mm.
And all 4 of those shows open the same year on Broadway. All of those shows are so uniquely wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
and I love all of those musicals.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to a group of people, and it's a small group at that, deciding who's going to walk home with those awards,
Mm-hmm.
um, it changes everything.
Yeah.
If Sunday in the Park with George had happened a year later,
Mm-hmm.
chances are it would have won that year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a matter of being at the right place at the right time in
Yeah.
this business, and we have no control over any of that. None of us
Right.
have control over
Right.
that. What
Yeah.
we do have control over is being ready when those opportunities come our way.
Mm. I love that. Yes. Being ready when they do come. Yeah, absolutely. In so many aspects of life, not just entertainment or the entertainment field, where so much of that is very true, but just in life in general,
Yeah, I
being
saw an
ready.
interview years ago with William Shatner,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just turning 80 and he was doing Priceline commercials. He had a new book that just came out that he was #1 on the bestsellers list.
Mm-hmm.
He had a one-man Broadway show. All of these things were happening. And
Yeah.
Larry King, who was interviewing him, said, "What do you attribute to your success at this point in your life?"
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I get out of the house."
Mm.
You think about this. I don't know what your phone looks like, but my phone has all these apps on it.
Yeah.
And I can push an app and I can order dinner. I
Right.
can push an app and I can order the latest bestseller.
Yeah.
I can push an app and I can order movie tickets or Broadway tickets
Right.
or concert tickets. All of that from sitting in this chair right now
Mm-hmm.
and never getting up and venturing outside.
Yeah.
All of that happens right here. And so it's getting harder and harder and harder.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting harder for venues
Right.
to get an audience.
Mm-hmm.
You never know from week to week to week, because a lot of people are waiting to the last
Right.
minute to make a decision.
Yeah.
We're living in a FOMO age
Yes.
where everybody is, I'm the kind of person, and I say to my friends, this happened this morning. I'm going to Palm Springs to do a show, as you
Mm-hmm.
know. And a friend of mine that lives in Palm Springs now said, "Let's get together." And I
Yeah.
said, "Pick a date and a time, and it's in my book."
Uh-huh.
And it's as simple as that. A lot of people are not either able
Yeah.
or willing
Mm-hmm.
to make that point.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
if you've ever seen the movie The Music Man, Marion meets Harold Hill at the bottom of the footbridge. And when she comes finally, she said, "I almost didn't show up." And he said, "You can spend a lifetime collecting tomorrows to find out you have no yesterdays."
Yes. Oh my goodness. We could talk for hours and hours. Absolutely. I just have one last question for you.
Yes.
What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
I feel that when I'm creative, I feel that I am contributing.
Mm.
I'm
Mhm.
contributing to my profession.
Mhm.
I feel that I'm contributing to my audiences. I mean,
Mhm.
it's for me, when someone shows up, there's no greater gift.
I love
They're
it.
they're entrusting you to take them on a journey.
Yeah.
And someone posted the other day a photograph, as you've seen thousands of these, sitting with their playbills, sitting in
Yeah.
the audience going, "Look where I am."
Uh-huh.
And he wrote underneath this, "I hope I like it."
Mm.
Think about that for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I said, why else would you be there?
Right.
I mean, and there are some people who go to see shows
Mm-hmm.
because it's the in thing to do to knock it.
Right. Sure.
And I always think about, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, everything that brought them to that moment.
Yeah.
When you think about Merrily We Roll Along.
Mm-hmm.
When Merrily We Roll Along opened on Broadway, it lasted 16 performances.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen Sondheim and Harold Prince, who had reached such a level in this business,
Mm-hmm.
said everyone was so quick to knock us off that pedestal.
Yep. My
And that's
goodness.
what is it? What is it about our culture where we want to knock people down so quickly?
That is a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
Well, if people want to learn about the things that you do, the shows and performances and things you have coming up, how could they go about doing that?
Google me.
Google
I'm on every social media platform.
I love
So just except for Twitter, I left for other reasons. That's
Mhm.
another podcast. But
Yes.
I am on most social media platforms,
Perfect.
and I'm ubiquitous. I'm everywhere. So
I love it.
just Google me
Wonderful.
and look it up.
Well, I will put links in show notes so people have easy
Thank you.
access. And thank you so much, Richard, for taking the time
You
to
are
chat
the
with me.
best.
Oh, you are the
Congratulations.
best. Thank
No,
you
thank you
so
for that.
much.
Thank
And
you.
I hope you have a wonderful show that you're headed
You too.
into.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.